Here we go. Okay, welcome Mayor Harp to our editorial board, and we were hoping you could fill us in on what's new in New Haven and what we need to know about.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to your new digs. It's very nice, and it sounds like you're happy here, and I'm glad you're still in New Haven. I'm really excited about where New Haven is going. The Connecticut Economist, I believe it is, indicated that we are growing the fastest, actually the second fastest in the state, and that Stamford is a little ahead of us. Over the past 5 years, since the recession, growing at about 20%, we're a little shy of about 19%. If you look at 2015, we grew at 6.8%, and we grew ahead of the state, as did almost all of the cities except, I believe, Waterbury. And so one of the things it says about our state, and that we know actually about our country, is that the cities are bringing us out of the recession, and so we're very excited about that. I've really focused in my administration on just a few things, 3 things that I'll talk about. One is safety. So if you look at the responsibilities that we have to make our city safe, and you look at the past 5 years, over every measure that the federal government requires we measure, we have reduced crime significantly. And so crime reduction across the board is really important. And 5 years ago, there were about 34 murders in New Haven. Chief Esserman came back. We reinstituted a hard line on community-based policing. We, shortly thereafter, and I participated in it through the legislature, were able to get funding. We were able to get funding for Project Longevity, which brings people in who are part of gangs that engage in enterprise and often use guns in our community. And we think that the call-ins have made a huge difference over the past 4 years. I believe that New Haven's Project Longevity is the most successful of those projects. That occurs as well in Bridgeport and Hartford, and you haven't seen the same decline in crime that you've seen here. The other thing that we have that is unusual, and I think Hartford's looking at it, but we've had it for a number of years, it's ShotSpotter, and over 1/3 of our city is now covered by ShotSpotter. And what ShotSpotter does is it is a listening system that triangulates when a bullet is fired. It can tell whether a bullet is fired in a standing position, whether or not it's in a car. It will know where that bullet is within 5 feet, so that you'll see that dislodged shell, and notifies our police office in a minute, both now on the iPhones that the supervisors have, that we hope to get in the officers' hands soon, through an app, but also through the computers that they have in their car. And just, I believe, a month and a half ago, there was a shooting on Chapel Street near, thankfully, St. Raphael's, but the first to respond were the police because of ShotSpotter, so that it really is helping to make our city safer and make us more able to respond to shootings. Our shootings, by the way, are also down significantly in New Haven, and hopefully it's because of ShotSpotter, because folks know that if you shoot, we're going to be there really early and get evidence earlier and have the ability to pick folks up. The other thing that we're doing in terms of safety is our USTAT program, which is, I believe, can at some point become a national model from the moment that I was on the Board of Aldermen over 30 years ago to every superintendent that I've known from then on has said whenever there's been an unfortunate shooting or killing, and a young person has been involved, they've said, I could have told you that that kid would be a shooter or be shot or killed. And so when Dr. Dow said it, I thought, well, that's interesting. You know, it sort of rolled around in my mind, well, you know, what are we doing about it? Dr. Mayo said it. I was in the legislature. I happened to ask him the question, but he didn't really have to pay much attention to what I said. And so then when Garth Harris said it, I thought, well, okay, let's try to figure this out then. Who can you say is next, or what does that child look like? And so basically, he didn't know exactly what they looked like, but he knew, and his staff knew the different characteristics that these young people would have. They would be over at age and undercredited, which meant they were not going to graduate from high school on time. They would be DF students. They would be students who are returning into the school system from the juvenile justice system. And they would be students who acted out in school. And often they would have at least 3 of these things continuously. So the other thing, so what I did was pull together all of the principals of the high schools, and they helped us identify those kinds of things. They pretty much know who the kids are that are going to get in trouble in high schools. And one of the things that they said was that oftentimes, and they didn't use this to determine the kids, but oftentimes when parents are called, it's really because something has happened at school, and parents are always having to come and defend the behavior of their young people, so that those calls are never pleasant calls. And so what we did was pull together, beyond the principals, our child guidance clinics, our housing authority director, and the folks who do social services on behalf of them, our police, fire, Dr. Comer, and we sat around for a few months and we tried to figure out, well, what are the barriers to provide services to these young people? And what we recognized was that, one, we have HIPAA and we have FERPA, and that meant that even everyone that was around the table couldn't really talk about that one child and that family, because the other assumption we made was that this family is likely to be a family that has receiving some form of case management from at least one agency, maybe multiple agencies. And so we needed to make sure that everybody was around the table, and once we identified these young people, that we could get common releases so that we could jointly plan on their behalf. And so what we did was have our legal staff, it was Sue Weisselberg, who worked on a common release form. And so then the question became, well, how do you get them to sign off on a common release form? So we went door to door, and we knocked on the doors to talk to the parents, not the kids, and to tell them that we want to serve you better, but we're going to need to have a common release form. And the first group that we identified were a little over 225. We knocked on those doors with teachers, firemen, police, whole groups of people on the doors, with the whole idea of we want to help you. We know it can't be easy managing a disruptive young person. So we were able to get those releases. And then we thought, well, okay, so now how do we plan together now that we know we can all communicate? And one of the things, and I think some of your staff have been down in our Emergency Operations Center, and we use the technology by Graywall called VOC. And during a storm, we can communicate in-house with all of our department heads, but as well with UI, with Yale, with Young Haven Hospital, and all of the big employers in town in real time. And so we asked Graywall if they would retrofit their software so that in real time, every organization, every case manager that impacts that family and that child's life can plan, do mutual planning and monitoring of the plan online in real time. And so we do that now in all of our high schools, and we're beginning to do it once a week at what we call youth stat. We go over all of these kids' plans, make sure that they're in school, make sure they get the help that they need, and it's been very successful. We've done some other things as well, but the one thing that we can point to is that none of the schools so far, and some of it has been this program, some of it has been luck, but so far, none of the schools that have participated in youth stat have lost a child to a shooting death in our city. And that couldn't be said before we came. So I think that we have the multi-pronged approach, community-based policing, project longevity, youth stat, has really made a difference in making our city safe. And so there's that. We continue to work on economic development. As you know, since I've become mayor, at least 2,000 market level apartment units have come online. And we're beginning to see, we just signed off on the agreement with Randy Salvatore to do the beginning of the Hilton Downtown project, so that we see more developers coming into our city not asking for our help, which is not how it started. Before there were land disposition agreements, we were partners in many ways. If you think all the way back to the 9th Square project, that was my first development project with Timos Reyes, we were in bid for that in terms of really trying to foment and get development to happen in our city. And now what we're seeing is it just happens on its own. We still worry about people in certain census zones, districts that have difficulty getting jobs, and so we're working with New Haven Rising and Yale University to make sure those folks get placed, because we think jobs are really very important. We did a city transformation plan that looked at least 6 of these things, including jobs. We're going to be rolling out very soon financial planning program that will be available to people in our community. We think it's really important for people that are on the margins, really understand our fiscal system and can plan and have tools that will assist them. And so we'll be rolling that out in a couple of weeks. And for me, I guess the sort of linchpin for moving us forward is education. That I am still a firm believer in school change and moving schools forward. I think over the past 2 years that you've seen New Haven improve beyond the other urban districts. Certainly still not enough given the kind of world that we live in as a knowledge-based economy, but we are making steady progress. And we'll continue to do so in spite of some staff changes. But there is a commitment, I believe, throughout the entire education system. One, to understand the importance to the future of the city, to do whatever it takes to make sure our young people have an education that prepares them not for our world, but for their world. And I often tell people that when I was in college, we had computers that were as big as maybe half of your office out there. And people had these big rooms of paper, and all I remember seeing the computer science students do is walking, pacing, and counting with these huge rooms of paper and this huge machine, and now in the palm of our hand with the Palm, I was going to say the Palm Pilot, which is no longer, with an iPhone, you can do things that were not imagined 40 years ago. And so 40 years from now, we have to have young people that are prepared for that world, not just ours. And so with that, I'll start.
Well, I'll start. Thank you so much for that. That was a really interesting summation, and someone who really cares about Haven. I thought hearing about his staff right from your voice was particularly interesting. Given what you just said about education, what do you see as happening over the next few months since the superintendent of schools is leaving in terms of how that's going to make an impact on school change? And do you think that the Board of Education will bring Dr. Mayo back as the interim superintendent in that time?
You know, one of the things that was negotiated is as a stop date for the current superintendent of November 1st. And I think that many of us on the board didn't recognize that we, by state law, have to have a superintendent in place by November 1st, or we have to extend that date for Mr. Harris. And so the board is, as a whole, is engaged in a process of finding a new interim superintendent. There are about 6 individuals who have the 093 designation who currently work for New Haven Public Schools. And there is the CAPS organization it's a trade organization for superintendents that has a list of those who qualify who would like to be interim superintendents. So the job was posted on the 7th, I believe, and it's going to be posted for 10 days, and then the board as a whole will engage in interviewing folks and will ultimately vote, we believe, on the 24th. Now that's the goal. So we will see. I'm not certain. It's going to be a fair process. I'm not certain who will apply. I will tell you that on those lists I did not see Dr. Mayo's name, but certainly he has that designation and can apply, as can Mr. Nast, who is on our board and has a designation as well. I don't think we're saying that anyone who's eligible can apply. I don't think we can wait. If someone hasn't received the 093 designation, you have 90 days to get it. But I think what I would argue to the board is that we've really got to make sure that we have someone in place that already has the designation. And we'll see what this committee is being led by Darnell Golson, and I'm not certain that all will participate in all of the interviews, but I'm certain that everyone will vote. And I'm, again, as I said, I'm going to argue that we go with someone with the 093 designation and flies into our concept of school change.
Is the same true for the person who you ultimately picked as the superintendent, that somebody who does agree and to continue, New Haven's school change plan?
That's what I'm looking for. I can't imagine us going backward. We've been ahead of the pack, and again, we've got so much more to do. I wouldn't say that we're in a place where we can brag, but we've been able to make progress. And I would hate for us to go back to a place where we're just churning. It's too important to the lives of these children.
What about Chief of Police? I know that Chief Campbell has been named interim Chief of Police.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a legitimate candidate for full-time chief? And does he have the requirements to fulfill that kind of position?
He does have the requirements to fulfill the chief's position should he choose to apply. I've asked Mike Carter, the Chief Administrative Officer, to engage in search, although a local search,
Right.
not a national search, for reasons that are kind of apparent. I think that we actually in New Haven do policing better than almost any other city. I really believe this than any other city in America, that our training is the best in the state, and that especially for urban districts. And so I think it would be difficult, and we've seen what has happened when we bring people in from outside who don't agree with the kind of policing that we do, and it really it sets us backwards. We start to have an escalation of crime, and I don't want that to happen. I think that we have people in our department that are ready to lead. You know, certainly more than interim chief Campbell, there are others in the department as well that are ready. What we're going to do is to get a group of about 9 people. This time I've asked Taisha Walker if she would add a couple of alders to that as well, and they're going to interview, and hopefully within the next month they'll be able to give me 3 names, and I'll make a selection. But
And when you say local, you mean the New Haven Police Department, not necessarily the state of Connecticut?
I mean New Haven.
New Haven, okay. Okay.
To quickly go back to education, about a year ago you were elected as president of the Board of Education for the first time. You then said during your president's report that you had a 10-point plan for improvement in the district. How do you believe you're doing on each of those 10 points? And if you've forgotten, I did write them down.
Okay. Well, you want to read them to me?
Sure. So number 1 was that we were going to focus on early literacy with interventions for students who need them the most.
Well, that's where I think we've made the greatest progress.
Right.
One of the things that we focused on was first grade reading. And we focused on first grade reading last year. So if you look at our scores, then we've shown the greatest increase in second graders who really learn to read in the first grade. And you know, honestly, Helen, I thought the same thing, even though I was convinced that should be something that we put on from our superintendent. And I thought, well, why don't we just focus on third grade? That's still early. And he said, no, we've got to do the first grade. And it really did work. And we've really seen a benefit from doing that. Okay, so what's the second one?
All right, well, I'll go through, and I mean, just to speed this up, I know point 10 that we would accelerate the SBAC results from the state so they didn't come over the summer.
No, that didn't happen.
That didn't happen this year.
No.
There was also a Blue Ribbon Reading Commission.
We have that.
Yeah. Saturday Academies, is that still continuing?
Yep. I don't think they've started yet, but we're going to continue them this year.
Okay. Extended Day.
Extended day in as many schools as we could afford to do, we've done.
A capital investment in computers in all classrooms.
Yeah, well, we did it at Hill House, where they really didn't have any. So one of the things that we discovered was that Hill House, where we were really, as you know, it's been in the news, we were able to get $600,000 out of Title I to give to Hill House, and they did computer upgrades. And I believe that it's in their capital budget. And I don't know if they've gotten them yet, but they are in the process of getting them system-wide. We have a bigger problem, though, than just the computers. We really need to find a way to expand our IT staff, because they have an IT staff about the same size as the cities, about 7 people, and yet they have computers for the entire school system that they have to maintain. So we've got to make sure they're in working order too.
Redesigning the alternative schools.
We're in the process of doing that. Billy Johnson's in charge of that, so it's in planning stage.
Increasing instruction time for expelled students.
That's part of that is part of the redesign of alternative schools.
Okay. Identifying community leaders and mentors to help engage students.
We are doing some of that and have done that through the youth staff program.
All right, and taking best practices across the district and having the Board of Education convene on those.
That was done. E. McNally went out to Achievement First schools to Common Ground, and they did that. I haven't seen the report, but it was done before she retired.
All right, that's the 10 of them.
All right, so we're making some progress.
There's something really interesting happening over at the fire department in regards to leadership. I just kind of, from your perspective, you know, the top, I don't know, 6 positions now are empty or are interim. In your perspective, you know, how did that come about, and how do you plan to address it and kind of get people into those positions?
Well, you know, I think that one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we have done tests that need to be done. And so I think that the new chief will come up with a plan to, one, get the tests. I think we have to test in the middle so that people can move up. And then we test for the higher so that we'll have room. And so all of those things take a little bit of time, but that will happen over the next 2 to 3 months.
Is he going to be bringing in his own assistant chiefs, or will he be hiring from?
When in my discussions with him, he said that he will not be bringing in an assistant chief right away, that he wants to get to know the people in the department, and it was my sense, and it's my expectation that he will hire an assistant chief from New Haven Fire Department.
You mentioned that you wanted to include, you invited one of the Board of Alder members into that meeting to choose the new chief. Obviously, there's been kind of a rocky relationship between your office and the Board of Alders. There was the lawsuit earlier in the year, and then there was the disagreement about them reviewing all the MOUs before they go toward the full Board of Alders. What else are you doing to kind of improve the relationship between your office and the legislative board?
Well, you know, one of the things that we do is that we have a lot of meetings and we try to work out problems before they exist. So I meet with the president of the Board of Alders at least once a week. And we go through things, and then we have leadership meetings. We're having one tonight to go over issues that some of our departments may have that will be coming before the board, so that we try to communicate a lot better, and I think that you'll see in the future that there'll be fewer difficulties.
Well, it's not on police or fire or education, but I'm New Zealand. I'm an environmental reporter, and I was going to ask if you could jump on that bandwagon for just a minute, and if there speak to if there are any climate action plans in the works for the city.
You know, one of the things that we talked about yesterday with Giovanni Zinn is completing our sustainability plan. And so we have bits and pieces of it in the works, and when he moved on to our engineering department, there was a void, but he tells me that he's going to find a way through interns to pull together the last pieces of our sustainability report and work on that. We're working on, as you know, we've replaced almost all of our lights in town with LED lights. It helps with our bill as well as with carbon emissions. We just last month did Go New Haven Go to try to reduce the overall carbon footprint. We are trying to make it easier for people who walk or bicycle to navigate our city. And I didn't realize this until about a couple of weeks ago, but we are the number 4 most bikeable city in the country. And we're in the process of doing a bus plan to see if we can make busing more efficient in our city, so that more people will use that as an option to get to work and get around our city.
Are you working with Connected Transit for that?
Yes,
Because we actually here have heard a number of people who are frustrated about getting around the city, and the way you know, so many buses go green and inefficient, and you know, all kinds of issues with that, and trying to be professional while also using public transit.
No, it's a real problem, and that's why we're engaged in this planning process. We're gonna be going around to neighborhoods and coming up with an overall plan. We receive federal dollars to do that, and we'll be working in conjunction with them. And I know that you recognize, as we do, that they're kind of a huge system to move in the way that you want them to move, but we are determined to improve the services here.
I want to sort of swing back a little bit towards the idea of the environment, if I may, and particularly since you noted you're thinking ahead to, you know, the life that, you know, people who are young now will lead in this city 40 years from now. Is the city thinking at all about climate change in terms of the potential for sea level rise, or you know, I think about this when I'm down on Monmouth. You know, obviously we used to be down there, and I like to visit there, and possible development there. Are you thinking about the fact that you know, that was all fill at some point, and the sea level might rise?
No, we are thinking about it, and we've undertaken as well as some, and are trying to find more resources to do more to maintain our shoreline. But we are very aware of it, and we're really kind of shocked that we didn't get the federal funding, the last Sandy amount that the state got because of our railroad tracks, because not only are we worried about just building there, we're worried about the railroad infrastructure that we have right there that is either at or just below sea level. So we are very concerned about it, and have had some resources, but we've got to get more, and certainly won't build if it doesn't make sense to do that, and it's something that we would keep in mind. The one thing that we are doing on Long Wharf is Food Truck Paradise. And I drove by yesterday, and the setup actually looks pretty good. But no, we are very much aware of it and very concerned. Especially even the area in Church Street South, where there's a lot of flooding from time to time because of inadequate stormwater infrastructure. It's something that we were just talking about yesterday.
Yeah, and we've seen that before at one of those big storms when the storm drains were actually spurting the water up like a fountain a few years ago.
And so one of the things that we want to do, and we had talked about doing, because some of the water is coming because of the inadequate storm drainage system, is coming from downtown, and you know, coming from Yale, and they have sustainability plans and as well. And so what we had talked about doing is sitting down with them to sort of look at what we've done on our sustainability plan with our engineering department and with Yale to make sure that we are all operating as we build these new buildings in a way that assures that we have adequate ways to remove water from even the center part of our city so that it doesn't flood downstream into, again, the railroad tracks, Church Street South area. So we will be having those conversations over the next few months.
I know Mary O'Leary has told me that she has stood in actual living units at Church Street South, and it felt mushy under her feet because
No,
of the water table there.
It's a good thing they're coming down.
I wanted to ask about communications, mainly between the city and our newspaper. I'm Victoria, I'm the breaking news editor, so we deal a lot with mostly police and fire, and you know, we've dealt with VU quite a bit. I feel like sometimes, especially now in the situation with department heads being, you're searching for, you know, a police chief. I feel like we're getting a little bit of a runaround when trying to get information, especially if it's later in the day, if it's urgent, something we need to get. So what can be done to sort of help improve that, or is there more that we can do to understand who exactly we should be talking to when somebody's not in the office, when, you know, who the next person to go to is, who we should be reaching out to when we're going to a scene to cover something, because often they say, well, we can't talk, we're not authorized, and they refer us to somebody else who's not available, who refers us to somebody else, so.
Well, it's the first time hearing about this problem. I will try to get it solved for you. You know, Lawrence is your first contact, and Lawrence should be able to get you somebody who can respond to the issue. And as you know, David Hartman,
Yeah, David's still at the police
at
department.
the police department and is responsible for
He's
doing
probably
nothing.
the best call to make.
Well, he's often sending out notes if he's off or he's in training, and there's, you know, don't contact me.
Is that what he said?
So, you know, who do we go to in that case? We call somebody else and they say, no, only David's the only one who can talk, we can't talk.
Well, I will get you a person who will take Dave's place when he's not there. I didn't know it was a problem, so thanks
I
for
think
bringing it to
another
our attention.
issue to backtrack off that is weekends especially are very
Yeah.
difficult when we're here and trying to get information. It's like, oh, you need to call this, oh, you need to, and so you just keep calling and everyone just keeps referring you.
We'll get you a list of who to call when.
Thank you.
And
people
we'll,
are out.
you know, we happily reach out to Lawrence, but I'm sure he doesn't work 24/7 and doesn't want to take calls at 3 a.m. about something minor, or, you know.
No, we'll get you a list.
I was gonna say, Lawrence, you don't mind if I just like walk down the street to your house and knock on the door?
Yeah.
You're welcome all the time. You can help break leaves.
Come on by.
We'll get you a list.
I've got a couple more questions if anyone else,
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah,
wants
well,
to.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned the food trucks on Long Wharf, and I know that Steve Fontana was working on some new sort of city laws, because as it stands right now, they're technically not allowed to be there per zoning regulations. So what's the status of that?
So we have a proposal that was presented to leadership and will be going to the Board of Alders.
Do you know when that's gonna happen?
You know, it should be happening really any time now.
Okay. I
It
can
was
call
my
him, John.
sense, Tomas, that they would be doing it. We met at our last leadership meeting and they went over the proposals with
Mhm.
leadership, and I think they were satisfied, and so they should be making they should be making the proposal officially
Mhm.
anytime now, so.
And what did you think of the plans? Do you think they'll be effective, or?
I think they'll be very effective. I think at least we have a plan, and at least we now know. This became a problem when I got a call from Yale and they were complaining about the food trucks on Broadway. And they said, but you know, this food truck over here is a really great food truck. So we sent our building inspector, because they're in charge of citing people who are inappropriately parked. And come to find out, where Yale liked it, it was illegal too. And so
Maybe they just like that kind of food.
Yeah.
Like the grilled cheese truck is okay, but we don't like baked potatoes.
And so then we realized we really had to come up with a system. And so it's been a year. Steve and his team have talked to the restaurant owners, they've talked with the food truck owners, they talked with the aldermen, and we think we've come up with a fair plan that will keep the food trucks here, because I think it's something that people really enjoy and having access to, and make it a more rational plan and a rational distribution of the trucks and the carts, so that we're taking a look at both. And the plan is done, and I thought honestly that within the next week or two it'll be submitted to the Board of Alders, because we've all approved the plan.
How does being mayor of New Haven compare to being in the state legislature, now that you've done it for a while?
Well, in the state legislature, you really dealt with policy more than implementation of policy. And so that's the biggest difference. And, you know, you really don't have that many employees, so that you don't really have to, and none of them were unionized. So you, and so that's a big difference. as well. And that in the Connecticut General Assembly, it's a discrete time, even though sometimes the appropriations work would be somewhat year-round. But when you're mayor 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And so you do get those calls in the middle of the night when something has happened. And you have to be available to take them. So a lot more energy.
More coffee?
Yeah, more coffee.
Mayor, can we get your take on, a little off the topic of New Haven, but, you know, obviously making a big impact on your take on the national political scene at this point and the presidential election?
Well, I'm a Democrat, and I think in the 90s, it was 96, ran the Clinton-Gore campaign here in the state. I was the chairman. So I've known and met personally and spoke to personally Hillary Clinton and have always felt that she'd be a great leader of this country. What surprised me about this election is how close it was, at least until most recently. I was also surprised that someone who'd never been elected to anything would have done as well. But you really, and it's really the world that we live in. When you are on television for 6 years, every Wednesday or Thursday night, and people really get a sense that they know you, then people are likely to vote for you. But what I also think that it says, our economy as a country, while it's recovering, it's the slowest recovering. And for incomes are really not recovering for the average person. And so people are unhappy and really are concerned that we aren't growing. And so I really understand how the whole idea of Make America Great again resonates with people who really don't understand how government works. But I am really happy now that it looks like, and I think it's tough for Americans really to have a woman leader. I've seen it as for mayor, when I ran, I think a lot of the things that I had to deal with, a man probably wouldn't have had to deal with. And so your spouse becomes more of an issue for a woman than if you are a man. There is a way that women, you can't be too harsh because they see you as some sort of negative character. If you're a woman, you can't be too soft because then you're too soft to lead. And so women who want to lead are in a very different situation than men are who want to. And so this is a first step for this country. It's been very difficult, but it looks like what I hope will happen, which is that we have the first woman leader. Certainly we've seen it in Germany and other countries. It's worked very well, and I think we've now evolved to the point as American people that we can accept at the top of the leadership queue in our country a woman who is prepared more than any man has ever been to lead our country. And I can't wait until Election Day for what I predict will happen, for it to happen. I think it will be a real milestone for us as an American people.
Will you be hosting an Election Day party?
I probably will be a part of one because I'll be Democrats, and we have a bunch of Democrats running all across the city, and I'm hoping that all of our State House people and others win, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to celebrate as well as the national election.
I know you said it was an idea from the Conference of Mayors, but the kindness campaign, how much was it also kind of influenced by the way the national political scene is kind of turned into?
Well, it really wasn't, but it sort of dovetailed. I think that we really got to just the sort of mean-spiritedness of debates and campaigns, that we really have to be more hospitable and you know, I wasn't raised that way, I think most of us were not, and we expect more from our leaders. And no, for me, when I sat there and I sort of saw what was going on in Louisville and in Anaheim, because it does seem a little strange if you think about it that we would have to have that, but I think it's really important that we say to people, these are our values, this is what we value, and the most important thing that we value is each other. If you're down on your luck, we want to help you as much as we can, and we want neighbors to help one another. That's what makes neighborhoods and communities great, and ultimately that, I think, is our perception of America anyway. So, but I think it has to be articulated and demonstrated so that people recognize that it has to be an intentional act that actually begins to make the city a better place to live.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Well, thank you very much for your time, Mayor.
All right, thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here. Hope to do it again.
So too.
Nice to see you, thank you.